Many of us spend our whole life in search of purpose, desperately seeking meaningful ways to make a difference in the world with the short amount of time we are given. The Deploying High podcast has been designed to help you analyze what gives you purpose.
Today, we are really fortunate. I have a very good friend of mine that's going to be on this episode. I met him a number of years ago doing a conference, actually in the West Palm Beach area, and it was called the Fearless Caregiver Conference. I had never heard of it before, but I did one, and I got hooked. And I have done several more since then working with this gentleman. He puts on a great conference, and he really goes to the soul of the people that he's talking to. And I think as we talk, you'll find out why. So I am very happy to introduce to you Mr. Gary Barg with the Fearless Caregivers. Gary, how are you?
Chief, it's wonderful to at least virtually be in the same room with you. And I appreciate you not saying how many years ago that was.
I listen, I'm in the same boat. I don't want to go too far back. No, it was definitely something. You know, some things you just always remember pretty vividly, and that was one of them. And it was the hotel. In fact, it wasn't West Palm Beach. It was Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
So that shows you how good my memory is now. So, but Gary, you know, a lot of people know you. A lot of people, you know, think a lot of you. You've done a lot with the magazines, with the conferences and so forth. But do they really know Gary? And I really kind of want, well, I kind of want to dig into that just a little bit here today. And I want to, who is Gary Barg? You know, where did Gary Barg come from? So tell us something about Gary Barg. You know, it's all yours.
Well, I'll tell you something that connects to, as everything we do does, family caregivers. And I'll just go back a short bit in time. It was 1990. So get settled in for, no, it won't be a long story. But I was in Atlanta doing video, getting set up to do work for the 96 Olympics. So projects coming up and stuff. And my dad had retired. I'm from South Florida, born and raised in North Miami Beach. I'm born in Miami Beach, raised in North Miami Beach. And my mom went from, you know, love of life for 50 years, partner in business, partner in life, to caregiver, and all that encompasses. And my sister lived down the street. She had two very little kids. And my brother was in New Orleans doing mall management. There used to be these things called shopping malls. And I was in Atlanta. And so we did everything we could to help. But what I always find that is, I say this as one now, caregivers are a very sneaky lot. Mom wouldn't give up how she was feeling, what she was going through, the intense challenges she was going through. When my brother or I would come in for a weekend, they would pull it all together as well as they could. And we never knew what was really going on. So by the time 94 ran around and my dad had passed, and my grandparents had both taken ill with cancer and Alzheimer's and diabetes. You know, the doctors loved him, but insurance companies, not so much. And I came in for a 2-week period in the summer of 94 to help mom out. Just make what did I do? Make decisions, be there for her. And that was the most intense, painful, emotionally challenging, life and death decisions constantly 2 weeks of my life. My grandmother was in and out of hospitals. My grandfather's cognitive condition was changing. My mom wasn't feeling good. At the end of these 2 weeks, I sat in mom's house in North Miami Beach, and I said, I'm glad I was here these 2 weeks, because look what you are going through. As if it was something out of the ordinary. And she looked at me dumbfounded, because it was just a normal 2 weeks in the life of family caregiver. And to me, it was the most intense 2 weeks of my life. So I packed up all my kit bag, my belongings, and came back down to South Florida to become what I like to call a caregiver's caregiver. She never asked me to come back, but I was there caring for her. as she was caring for her loved ones. And I found the best support and advice, information from family caregivers in, the 3 o'clock in the morning, hospital waiting rooms, going in and out of long-term care facilities. So I thought, I was in media, maybe we could help. And we thought, let's start a magazine. It might be a little easier than trying to get something on television. There wasn't really internet, wasn't YouTube. And I went into these things called bookstores. And anybody younger than 30 wouldn't know what I mean, but they were stores with books and magazines, and didn't find anything, not a single thing dealing with the issue. So I don't know what this means, but on July 4th, 1995, went to the printers, picked up the first copies of Today's Caregiver magazine, and we've been going ever since. In 98, we started our first in-person Fearless Caregiver conference at Nova Southeastern University with Robert Urich, who was just a lovely, lovely man, and he passed a few years later. And then we went on until we were lucky enough to have an event with you, and met your lovely wife and your team. And the whole idea is for Today's Caregiver magazine, caregivercom, the Fearless Caregiver conferences, and even the various books we put out, it's about the caregiver, front and center. If we can't educate them, support them, help them, entertain them, hopefully, then we're not doing anything. And even with the celebrities we always have on the covers of the magazine, and who have come to the conferences, they are caregivers too, or care supporters. So it's, like they said in the 92 elections, it's the economy stupid. For us, it's the caregiver stupid. And it's all about supporting and managing the support of the family caregiver. And I just, I know I'm going on and on. I apologize.
No, please.
But I do want to say since that first event in 98, we go to where the caregivers are. I just don't think it's possible, family caregiver, to travel across country to go to an event for a few days and what are they going to do with their loved one? So we'll go where the caregivers are. And we've been in 47 cities in 26 states, hosting 387 in-person events and 10 virtual events, because for some reason in March of 2020, all the in-person events stopped cold. But I'm really thrilled to announce that for the first time in 2.5 years, we're going to have an in-person event, and it's going to be in the South County Civic Center in Delray, Florida, which is one of our favorite places, and people can come from anywhere. Then we're going to Port St. Lucie, and then we'll go to Tampa, and the next thing we have lined up is New Haven, Connecticut. So, the virtual events have been wonderful, really great interaction. People can do the Q&A, and we'll interact with the panel just like we did in the in-person events. But virtual hugs aren't as good. No. So we're just thrilled to be back, as they say, back in the saddle. I haven't been in an airplane in 2.5 years, so that's probably not a fun thing.
Hadn't changed any.
No.
Not at all. It's. I hope you're doing the one in Connecticut during the warm months.
Never do. Never do.
I was afraid you'd say that.
The wonderful South Central Connecticut Area Agency on Aging, and we've only done them in November and December, except the pizza's really good. So that, and the seafood. So that kind of makes up for it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take your word for that. It's interesting how our paths have crossed and we didn't know it. You say you were in Atlanta for the Olympics?
Yeah.
I was there. I was a commander of a shift at the soccer venue in Athens. I handled the evening shift, and that's when the ladies won the gold medal.
Well, I want to qualify. I didn't have as good a time as you because in 94, when I came down to visit Mom, I moved from Atlanta, and I never. The closest I got to Olympics is watching it on her television set
Oh, okay.
in
All
North
right.
Miami Beach. I was supposed to be there and had a lot of projects set up, but once I saw what Mom was going through, nothing was as important as coming home and helping her.
Well, it had its moments of a lot of fun, but if you remember, that's also when the bombing happened,
Oh
and
yeah.
so it got pretty tense there for a little while. But it was just amazing that you're familiar with the Atlanta area. Um, but that's great. Now, tell me, because people see these conferences and and they enjoy what happens at them, but there's a lot to putting on a conference. Kind of walk us through. Okay, what does Gary do to get a conference up and running?
Well, you put on a great team. You have a great team of outreach folks led by Kathy Bird, who's been with us for a while, and uh, uh, editorial folks led by Nancy Schoenwalter, management folks led by my baby brother. When your baby brother just turned 60, that's not, but Stephen Barg. And the key is to make sure that it's all about supporting the caregivers. In other words, we don't have vendor rooms. We don't have people going from session to session to session. We did that in the very early ones, and we realized that no matter how good the session was, at the end of the day, caregivers had to leave. So we call it a full caregivers day. It's 10 to 2, and all the partners. And as you know, we don't have hundreds of partners. We want to make sure that there's a lot of intimate interaction, and all the partners are in the same room with the family caregivers. Their tables just surround them. So everything is about education and support. And then I think the biggest secret is to find the right folks like yourself, to interact with them, educate them, support them, who aren't afraid to take questions, who aren't afraid to interact, because we call it no PowerPoint, no speechifying, no pontificating zone. It's about experts who are family caregivers and family caregivers who are experts, because we always have a moment at the conference we call a stump the panel. Never will know when it's going to happen, but the conference has two Q&A panels, and then sessions for experts like yourself to stand up solo and interact with them. But at the Q&A panels, we'll have, and the ones coming up, elder care attorney, VA expert, someone from the Air Agency on Aging, doctor. And since it's an open interaction and we run around the room with mics getting caregivers to open up and ask questions, we also find that every single caregiver has a piece of the puzzle that some other caregivers in the room needed and didn't know they needed, or didn't know there was such a solution. So when the question comes up and the panel may pause or, that's a great question. I don't know if I have an answer for that. 5 hands come up and we run around the room, and 5, 6, 7 caregivers will tell us how they solved the problem. On our Fearless Caregiver YouTube channel, there's a wonderful video that we shot in Nashville. A young guy, maybe not so young anymore, about 12, 15 years ago, stood up and talked about how he couldn't get his mom to stop driving. And by the time I walked to the front of the room to talk to the attorney, talk to someone from the area agency, I was stopped by probably 12 caregivers who said, here's how I did, here's how I did, here's how I did. And that's the secret sauce. The secret sauce of these events is to make it a comfortable a venue for caregivers to feel that they can ask any question and know the answer's forthcoming, or if they don't, the answer's not there, someone will get the answer for them, or answer any question that, hey, I figured this out. I know how to do this. Let me get involved here. And that's, there's no audience at a Fearless Caregiver conference. Everybody's an expert and everybody's learning.
Well, and I have found that to be true, because even during the time that I was working with you on the conferences and speaking, my wife and I were actually going through those experiences. And until you've been through those experiences, It's the old, walk a mile in my shoes. It's easy to sit back and listen to some of the so-called experts talk about it. But until you've been there, like you said, until you talk to the people that have actually uh, been in those situations, my father-in-law had vascular dementia, then my mother-in-law had Parkinson's, which developed into dementia. So my wife and I became caregivers to the point that eventually we had to put my mother-in-law into memory care. But I'll give my wife all the credit in the world. She was there every day with her mother. But talking about driving, I had that experience. I'll never forget. My mother-in-law gets a letter from DMB saying, okay, you can't drive anymore. So my wife gets the call. I get home and my wife launches into me about this letter and, okay, now you need to go handle it. Me, yeah, me? It's your mother. Oh no, you need to go handle it. She'll listen to you. But yeah, you have to go through those experiences and then you can speak to them. I remember a movie. I don't know if you're a movie buff or not. It was a long time ago. It's called Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, sure.
Do you remember the scene in when the machine gunner and the journalist were talking to each other? And the journalist was, he was a Marine Corps journalist, but he was talking about all this stuff that he'd seen and all that and what he'd done. And this machine gunner looks at him. He says, you can talk the talk. Can you walk the walk? And that line has always stuck with me because it's true. It's very, very true. And I think these conferences that you have are tremendous, absolutely tremendous, because even doing those, I learned a lot. And I think that may be the point of what you're doing with your conferences is the experts, so-called experts, learn from the people that are out there in the field doing it and vice versa. So, my hat's off to you. I think they're wonderful conferences. So, all right, now you're bringing your conferences back in line. You've got your magazine still up and running, I suppose. All right, so what's next for Gary? I mean, you got conferences. You got anything else on the horizon? You got any more plans you've got in your back pocket?
Yeah, well, everything. It's interesting that every challenge is an opportunity. Sometimes the pandemic has led to a lot of telehealth, a lot of interaction, a lot of visibility for caregivers. Because as I keep writing in my newsletters during that time, now we all caregivers. If you never knew what a caregiver is going through, as we're living through this, we're all kind of caregivers. And so we've been a lot more integrative. In other words, the conferences are all videotaped, and you could get them through caregivercom. The articles, the editorial, the interviews that we do at the events, we'll use them. We do 2 weekly newsletters, and I write a column in one of them. And the conferences were always an easy way for me to get editorial because you cannot talk to a family caregiver without learning something. And so I had to work a lot harder these last 2 years or so. So all of that we learned from the events, we try to bring out into our other media and do more interactivity. Do a lot more Zoom. The expert Q&A, caregiver thought leader interviews we do now all start as Zooms. And then we transcribe them and put them in the magazine or send them out as e-blasts. So if anybody's interested, they can sign up for our free newsletters and e-blasts at caregiver.com. They could sign up for the conferences. That's anything that they want to do with us, and we'd like to be included in their lives and ask us questions. Just come to caregiver.com.
Speaking of that, Gary, Project Lifesaver does a conference once a year, and we'll be doing one in August in Orlando. And While you have a great message for the caregivers, I'd like to invite you to come to our conference and speak to some of the law enforcement officers and healthcare people that are going to be there, because I think this is something that they need to know about. They need to know about the caregiver conferences and what you've learned from caregivers. They are somewhat of a support system for these caregivers, and the more they know what's going on, and the more resources they have, such as yours. I mean, yours is a tremendous resource for caregivers. I think the better off they're going to be in being able to do their job in the field and dealing with these people. So I'd like to get with you, and if we can get you to the conference, I would love to have you there. And you can count on me for your conferences. Just give me the heads up, and I will be more than happy to be there, as I enjoy them so much. So is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with? Any words or any invitations? The floor is yours.
Sure. Well, any conference that we do, no matter where it is, any caregiver is invited, and we never charge a family caregiver. The lunch is included. Take home all the information, the advice, support. The connections that you make at the events are always great. But the key, I think, to any family caregiver is, and I've seen this over and over and over again, you are not alone. No matter where you are, we've done conferences in the most rural parts where the Wi-Fi didn't work, to the largest cities. And at some point, every one of us, 77.6 million caregivers in this country, at some point, we're all believe we're absolutely alone and no one's going through what we're going through. But that's not true. Maybe nobody is going through exactly what you're going through, but there's a lot of people walking a similar path. There's a lot of organizations like you guys, like the Area Agency on Aging organizations, hopefully like us, that are out there, just the Alzheimer's Association, looking to support you. So come to caregiver.com, be part of the conversation, realize you're not alone, and realize that job one for any caregiver is to learn to care for yourself as well.
Very good words. Well said. Very well said. Gary, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. I hope that the people pay attention and learn and even attend the Fearless Caregiver conferences. It'll be well worth their while. And again, I'll get with you about coming to our conference. I'm not letting you off the hook that easy. So you've been listening to Deploying High. I am Chief Gene Saunders, the founder and CEO of Project Lifesaver International. Today we have been speaking to Mr. Gary Barg. He is the founder of the Fearless Caregiver conferences and the fearlesscaregiver.com. I'll get it out, Gary. Stay with me. I appreciate your being here today. If you have not subscribed to the Deploying High podcast, please do so, either on Anchor or Spotify or the YouTube channel. The more support you give us, the more we can come back and give you. Thank you, and y'all have a great day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deploying High podcast with Chief Gene Saunders, brought to you by Project Lifesaver International. Deploying High would like to thank all of our supporters across the country and around the world. If you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe to our channel, make a donation, and don't forget to tell a friend about us. All proceeds from the Deploying High podcast go to support Project Lifesaver International, online at projectlifesaver.org, the original 501c3 nonprofit organization.